Hello my friends, and welcome back to the reading of the Spirit's book. Today we are at chapter 10, and chapter 10 has as title The Law of Freedom. And as subtopics we have natural freedom, slavery, freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, free will, fatalism, knowledge of the future, a theoretical summary on the driving force behind human actions. We start with natural freedom, question 825, and it's the following. Are there positions in the world in which persons can flatter themselves by believing they are enjoying absolute freedom? Answer: no, because all of you, the least as well as the greatest, need one another. Question 826. What would be a condition in which humans could enjoy absolute freedom? Answer: that of a hermit in the desert. As soon as two individuals are brought together, there are rights to respect, and they no longer have absolute freedom. Question 827. Does the duty of respecting the rights of others deprive individuals of the rights pertaining to themselves? Answer: absolutely not, for they are rights that have been granted to them by nature. Question 828. How can we reconcile the liberal opinions of certain men with their frequent despotism in their own homes and over their subordinates? Answer: in these instances, although they have an intellectual understanding of natural law, it is offset by pride and selfishness. They know what they should do, but they do not do it in practice. They make their principles a well-calculated farce. Question that comes after this answer. Will the principles they have professed during this life be taken into account in the next? Answer: the more intelligence individuals have for understanding a principle, the less excusable they will be if they have not applied it to themselves. I tell you truthfully that simple but sincere persons are more advanced on God's pathway than those who try to appear to be what they in fact are not. And then we have the next topic, which is slavery. And as for slavery, there is a note on the book saying the following. The Spirit's book was published in 1857, while slavery was still legally practiced in many parts of the world, including the United States and Brazil. The U.S. State Department publishes an annual report entitled Trafficking in Persons that at present 2006 discloses the fact that 14 nations are not doing enough to stop international human trafficking. This report covers severe forms of trafficking in persons, defined as letter A, sex trafficking, which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age. Or B, the recruitment, harboring, transporting, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor of services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. Well, continuing with the topic. Question 829. Are there human beings who are meant by nature to be the property of others? Answer. Every instance of subjection of the human being to another is contrary to the law of God. Slavery is an abuse of power and will gradually disappear with progress, as will all other abuses. And there's a note from Kardec under this answer saying the following. Any human law that establishes slavery is a law against nature, because it equates people with animals and physically and morally degrades them. Question 830. When slavery belongs to the customs of a culture, are those who practice it reprehensible, since they are doing nothing more than following a usage that seems natural to them? Answer. Evil is always evil. All your sophistry will not render an evil action good. However, the responsibility for evil is relative to the means at your disposal to comprehend it. Those who use the law of slavery are always guilty of violating the law of nature. But in this, as in all things, the guilt is relative, because slavery was a custom among certain cultures. People practiced it in good faith as something that seemed natural for them. But their reason, more developed and specially enlightened by the teachings of Christianity, eventually showed them that the slave was their equal before God. Then they had no more excuse. Question 831. Doesn't the natural inequality of aptitudes place certain peoples under the subjection of the more intelligent ones? Answer. Yes, in order to enable them to develop, but not to demean them still further by slavery. Human beings have long regarded certain races as domesticated beasts of burden equipped with arms and hands, and have thought that they had the right to sell them as such. They have considered themselves to be of pure blood. The folly of those who do not look beyond matter. It is not the blood that must be pure or less pure, but the spirit. Question 832. Are there those who treat their slaves humanely, who allow them to lack nothing, and who think that freedom would expose them to even greater deprivations? What do you say about them? Answer. I say that they understand their own interests very well. They also show the same care for their cattle and horses in order to get more profit at market. They are not as culpable as those who mistreat their slaves, but they nonetheless use them as merchandise, depriving them of the right to belong to themselves. Topic: freedom of thought. Question 833. Is there something in human beings which escapes all constraint and through which they enjoy absolute freedom? Answer. It is through thought that they enjoy unlimited freedom. For thought knows no obstacles. Its manifestation may be hindered, but not erased. Question 834. Are humans responsible for their thoughts? Answer. They are responsible before God. God alone can know their thoughts and condemn or absolve them according to divine justice. Next topic. Freedom of conscience. Question 835. Is freedom of conscience a consequence of freedom of thought? Answer. Conscience is an inner thought that belongs to persons, as do all their other thoughts. Question 836. Do humans have the right to set up barriers to freedom of conscience? Answer: no more so than to freedom of thought, because God alone has the right to judge the conscience. If humans use their laws to regulate relations between individuals, God uses the laws of nature to regulate relations between individuals and God. Question 837. What is the result of barriers to freedom of conscience? Answer: it constrains individuals to act against their own way of thinking, turning them into hypocrites. Freedom of conscience is one of the characteristics of true civilization and progress. Question 838. Is every belief respectable, even when notoriously wrong-headed? Answer: every belief is respectable when it is sincere and leads to the practice of the good. Reproachable beliefs are those that lead to evil. Question 839. Are we blameworthy when we use our own beliefs to scandalize someone who does not think like us? Answer: it shows a lack of charity and goes against freedom of thought. Question 840. Does it go against freedom of conscience to obstruct beliefs that might disturb society? Answer: acts may be restrained, but inner belief is inaccessible. And then there's a note from Kardec under this answer. Restraining the external acts of a belief when such acts cause harm to others does not go against freedom of conscience, for such repression leaves to the belief its entire freedom. Question 841. Out of respect for freedom of conscience, should we allow the propagation of harmful doctrines, or may we, without going against such freedom, seek to lead back onto the path of truth those who have been led astray by erroneous principles? Answer: certainly you may and you should, but to follow the example of Jesus, you must teach by gentleness and persuasion, and not by force, since that would be worse than the belief of the one whom you desire to convince. If there is something that ought to be imposed, it is goodness and fraternity. But we do not believe the means for doing so is violence. Conviction cannot be forcefully imposed. Question 842. Since all doctrines claim to be the sole expression of the truth, by what signs can we recognize which one actually has the right to be presented as such? It will be the one that produces the fewest hypocrites and the greatest number of moral individuals, which means they practice the law of love and charity in its greatest purity and widest application. By this sign, you will recognize which doctrine is good, because those doctrines that result in sowing disunion and establishing divisions among God's children can be only erroneous and harmful. And then there's the other topic called free will. Question 843. Do humans act with free will? Answer: since they have freedom of thought, they have freedom of action. Without free will, human beings would be machines. Question 844. Do people enjoy free will from the moment of birth? Answer: they have the freedom to act from the moment they have a will to act. During the first phases of life, freedom is almost non-existent. It develops and changes its objectives as the faculties develop. Since the thoughts of children are in proportion to the needs of their age, they apply their free will to things that are necessary for them. Question 845. Aren't the instinctive predispositions that individuals bring at birth an obstacle to the exercise of their free will? Answer. Instinctive predispositions arise from those of the spirit before its incarnation. Depending on how much the spirit has evolved, these predispositions can incite the individual to reprehensible acts in which he or she will be aided by spirits who sympathize with such dispositions. However, there is no irresistible incitement if the individual has the will to resist. Remember, where there is a will, there is a way. Question 846. Doesn't our organism have an influence on our actions in life? If so, isn't it at the expense of our free will? Answer. The spirit is certainly influenced by matter, which may hinder its manifestations. That is why on worlds where bodies are less material than on Earth, the faculties develop with more freedom. However, the instrument does not give faculties to the spirit. Furthermore, in this case, it is necessary to distinguish between moral faculties and intellectual faculties. If individuals have an instinct for murder, it is assuredly their own spirit that possesses it, and which transmits it to them. It never arises due to their bodily organs. Those who suppress their thoughts in order to occupy themselves with matter become like an animal, and even worse, since they no longer think they no longer think about being on guard against evil. It is in this that they become culpable, because they act in this matter of their own free will. Question 847. Can a distortion of the faculties deprive humans of the free will? Answer. Those whose intelligence is impaired by any cause are no longer in complete control of their thought, and thereafter they have no more freedom. Such distortion is frequently a punishment for the spirit, who might have been vain and proud and might have made bad use of its faculties in another existence. It may be reborn in the body of someone who is mentally impaired, as the despot in the body of a slave, and the spiteful wealthy person in that of a beggar. The spirit, however, is perfectly conscious of such restraint and suffers from it. It is in this constraint that one sees the action of matter. Question 848. Does the distortion of the intellectual faculties because of drunkenness excuse reprehensible acts? Answer. No, because drunkards intentionally deprive themselves of their reason in order to satisfy their crude passions, instead of one wrong they commit to. Question 849. In humans in the primitive state, what is the dominant faculty? Instinct or free will? Question. Instinct, which does not impede their acting with entire freedom in certain things. Like children, they first apply this freedom to their needs. It develops later through intelligence. Consequently, you, who are more enlightened than primitive peoples, are more responsible for your acts than they are. Question 150. Isn't social position sometimes an obstacle to full freedom of action? The world undoubtedly has its demands. God is just and takes everything into account, but holds you responsible for the paltry efforts you make to overcome such obstacles. Well, guys, we stay here for today. I hope you guys have liked this reading as much as I do, and have a great day. God bless you all. Big kiss. Bye bye.